This program was produced by and first broadcast on Radio Kidnappers, a community access media station. Thanks to New Zealand On Air for making this type of programming possible.
Good morning, everyone. This is Heiko from the Acupuncture on Air show. And sadly, this is the last show for the year, but we're going to try finish off with a big bang, and we're going to be talking to Ilana Souter again from Melbourne and talking about menopause, which I know is a problem out there that affects a lot of women. So good morning, Ilana. How are you?
Good morning, Heiko. I'm great. How are you?
I'm very good. And look, it's probably another thing that I need to wear that our show's doing so well, and then obviously next year you and I will have to have our own TV show in the States.
We'll be moving to LA.
Follow up and move to LA. But do you think we'll still might have a spot for Ken to do something for us?
I don't know. Do you think you'll be able to handle the fame, the paparazzi?
So anyway, look, but today's show should be quite interesting because it's menopause, and we know that there's so much information out there, and women taking HRT and progesterone creams and all that. But most people know menopause is a problem or a situation, with the hormones changing or technically decreasing, particularly estrogen and progesterone, and of course 2,000 years ago, the traditional Chinese medicine doctors didn't know about hormones. But perhaps you could tell us from a Chinese medicine perspective first, what causes the menstrual cycle to stop around this age 50?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, in Chinese medicine, it's essentially a decline of the Jing, which is the essence, that primal essence that keeps us alive and keeps us growing, the foundation. And so as we age, and it's mentioned in the Su Wen, the Simple Questions, which is a very ancient book from about 2,000 years ago, it describes the life cycle of a woman, and every 7 years she's developing and growing and aging. And so it begins at 7 and it goes up by every 7, and eventually at 49, that is the decrease or the decline. And it's interesting because, data indicates menopausal age has remained unchanged for centuries. And in terms of us understanding it scientifically, the Jing could be seen as those primordial follicles or those, pre-eggs on a woman's ovaries, because when she's a baby in uterus, she's got 6 million. When she's born, she's got about 600,000. And then by the age of menopause, she has around 10,000 left. So it's almost not so much something happening, but it's just a natural decline happening over time.
Okay, so what we then have, it's normal then from a Chinese medicine point of view for the menstrual cycle to stop around the age of 49 or 50. But what about the symptoms that women experience? Can you first tell us what they are, what most of the symptoms are?
Yeah, and look, it's interesting because, like when we discussed in the PMS talk, there's a lot of, how do we know that people really do get these signs? Is it perhaps psychological? Because every woman knows that at 50 she's going to go through menopause, and she knows what the signs are from other women and her mother and aunts telling her. So that's something to think about. But, the most common symptom would be the hot flashes or flushing, which is at about 85%, and this will occur for at least 5 to 10 years post-menopausal. So that's a really common one. And then it's a spectrum of disorders. So some women might get vaginal dryness, headache, exhaustion and lethargy, and then emotional signs and symptoms, irritability, anxiety, nervousness, depression, trouble sleeping, sweating, and difficulty concentrating.
Right,
Probably the main ones.
Now these symptoms, of course, they're they're normal in terms of the Western approach to things. But does Chinese medicine regard them as normal? Should women be getting them if the body is balanced or healthy or regulated or whatever. What's your take on that one?
Yeah, well, I would say no, it's not normal to get like a vast spectrum of symptoms at menopause because it's not a disease. It's a normal physiological transition, and it does require intervention only when the woman experiences uncomfortable symptoms. And, I mean, one thing that we note in Chinese medicine is that the kind of menopause, whether it's a really smooth transition or a rocky one, is dependent on the woman's life. Her lifestyle and dietary habits from childhood onwards determine what kind of menopause she will have. For example, if she's been overworking or, eating a poor diet. And the other interesting thing is, because we just kind of see it here in the West as a decline of hormones, but with Chinese medicine, it's the Jing, and the Jing performs numerous functions. It flows in and out of all the extraordinary vessels. It determines your energy, drive and strength, immunity and resistance to pathogenic factors. So I suppose, we see it as a deeper aspect, and we can support it quite a lot with Chinese medicine.
So I do know that from a Western point of view, they say that women who smoke, and I think they even worked it out, like if they smoke an average of 15 a day for so many years or whatever, one is that their menopause can come earlier, and two is that their menopausal symptoms can be much more severe. So this sort of indicating that, does smoking damage the sort of the hormones, or is it from a Chinese medicine point of view that it's really damaged the yin, which gives you more of these sort of heat signs? But particularly now, in the modern world, it's like, HRT has become sort of the talk of the town, and many women are happy to take it, but many women are not happy to have it prescribed, and even now, many researchers and doctors believe that it actually is causing more harm than good. But how do you explain to the patients the traditional Chinese medicine approach to treating menopause? Is it, and it's obviously using from a herbal perspective, it's different to just, Western medicine just gives you 2 hormones and so that's it. But what about the sort of the Chinese herbal medicine approach? How can you explain that to the patients?
Yeah, well, look, I explain it to my patients mainly by going to the research, because it was something that I researched a lot in my master's degree, and it's really interesting. So if you go to, I will talk about this herbal formula, Ershen Tong, which means the 2 immortals decoction. But when they did this study, they found, so they tested, serum hormone levels, so obviously estrogen, progesterone and whatnot. So they tested both groups, so the control with no herb and the herb group, tested the serum hormone levels at the beginning of the study and then a few months later at the end. And the really fascinating thing was, in the herbal group, there wasn't really much change in the woman's hormones, which indicates, it's very interesting, it indicates, and I've seen it in other studies as well, that Chinese medicine can improve the signs and symptoms. It can reduce the hot flushing, the sweating, and all these signs and symptoms we deem as hormonal issues. However, it doesn't necessarily increase the woman's estrogen and whatnot. So in my opinion, it's actually very safe like that.
Yeah, and this is what I've said to patients too, is I said that, the treatment doesn't change the readings of the estrogen or the progesterone, but it fixes the symptoms that are associated with the deficiency of those. So it makes me, and the Chinese medicine textbooks will say that, like it's normal to have menopause at, say, age 49 and the period to stop, but not normal to experience a whole bunch of disobeying symptoms. And,
exactly.
But what I've mentioned in the past, and I'll say it again today, it's like, I love the internet and access to all this knowledge, but I've encountered so many problems now with people that they just from going to Google and then being brainwashed by a few of the herb companies on the on the net, And like the herb diascorea, for example, and because it's shown to have, they've done a test on a couple of lab rats or something, and it affects the estrogen. So then it's like all these women they want to start taking copious amounts of it as an elixir of immortality, and just end up becoming constipated and bloated or getting headaches, but. And as I say, the manufacturers of these pills are laughing like all the way to the bank. But for interest's sake, and that's what I'd like to point out for this show, that women just don't rush out and then just suddenly start buying this thing. But tell us about maybe one or a couple of the herbal formula that might be used for menopause.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that herb, the distichoria, which is shanyao, and the other interesting thing is that, usually in Chinese herbal medicine, we don't actually ever prescribe a single herb, do we?
That's right, yeah.
So that's the problem as well, because if they're taking a single herb, then they're not having other herbs to balance out the function or modify accordingly. However, one of my favourite, and it always depends on the patient, because as you know, not everyone can take the same formula, but Ershan Tung, which is the two immortals decoction, I think it's a really nice formula, because obviously menopause, there's clearly a decline in the kidney jing. There's clearly usually a decline in the kidney yin plus some empty heat, which is why a woman would get sweating and night flushing. But Ershan Tung, it addresses those patterns, but also it addresses the kidney yang, because naturally at that age there is also a decline in the kidney yang, so that warming metabolic function of the body. And it's a great formula because it's really simple. It's got 6 herbs. It's got 3 hot herbs, shanmao, yin yang ho, baji tian. It's got a couple of herbs to clear the heat from the body, huang bai and zhemu. And then it's got that queen woman's herb, which is dungui. And if you're the right pattern, not everyone is. Sometimes it's a bit too overheating for some women, but it can work really well.
But then as a herbalist, you can modify the formula then.
Always modifying it, So if they've got less yang deficiency, you reduce the doses of the yang herbs. If they're more blood deficient, you can increase the dungui and perhaps put in some bai shao or something else in.
Yeah, and so... But unfortunately, I know that not all women have the convenience or the time or possibly the finances to see a qualified herbalist to, diagnose the specific imbalances and what they might actually need as an ongoing course of, a treatment for a month or 2 months or whatever it might be. But what about some, a few maybe simple herbs that they could take at home, or even maybe some sort of rough Chinese medicine dietary guidelines? Is there anything you could let our listeners know there?
Yeah, sure. Look, I would say if a woman was wanting to try herbs for her menopausal signs and symptoms, she could even just get in touch with a local or, well-known Chinese herbalist, and always ask to do a quick script consult where, because sometimes we only need 10 minutes to just go through the questions and create a formula and send it to them. Mm-hmm. So that it's always worthy asking them that. Now, in terms of lifestyle, because menopause is a time when the woman seems to get hot, the advice is to reduce all heating foods and drinks, so coffee, tea, alcohol, spicy fried food, and of course have a balanced diet, well-prepared grains, lots of veg and greens, some nuts and meat, some fruit. I find that the mindset is really important, because obviously if a woman's very worried about this climacteric transition, perhaps she will psychologically get more signs and symptoms. So just, meditating, feeling positive about it, doing good things about it. Now, in Chinese medicine, because it is a decline of yin, anything yin is going to be good. So, going for a walk morning and night, yoga, tai chi, swimming in the sea, and then and resting as well, and processing emotions, because obviously the emotional aspect is great. And then, in Asia, women do consume foods with phytoestrogens, and I know there's a lot of controversy around that, and these days most people say, don't have any soy, it's really bad for you, but everything in moderation. So, small amounts of some soy, tofu, you know, flax seeds, yam, sesame. They can be beneficial too. And, yeah, I think that's the main summary.
That's great. Listen, again, many thanks. We have to finish up here. Ken's over there waving to us.
And to both of you as well for having me. It's been amazing.
These 8 great shows to finish off the year with.
Yeah.
And so when Ken's really looking forward to my closing song, and because like this show,
what are you playing?
Well, I was going to say it won't be a Christmas song because as far as I'm concerned, there are no good Christmas songs. But I am going to pick a song that was released in this year, 2000, I think, a song by Ruella. And the song is Like You Mean It. And I don't know whether you've heard of Ruella, but yeah, she's an amazing singer and songwriter, and she does lots of stuff for TV shows and things like that. So so here it is, and thank you again, Ilana, and we look forward to we'll try to get you on again next year.
Yeah, we'll see you next year.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, bye.
This program was produced by and first broadcast on Radio Kidnappers, a community access media station. Thanks to New Zealand On Air for making this type of programming possible.